There has been a lot of hype about this Philadelphia 76ers roster, and rightfully so. But there has been one replacement that needs to be made that I do think that has flown under the radar a little bit. In the crossfires of all the financial hoops that Daryl Morey has hopped through, the Sixers unfortunately did have to waive Paul Reed, whose contract was non-guaranteed. Now, we've been through the roller coaster experience that is Paul Reed, and we do know that there's already been a replacement as they did sign Andre Drummond, but we know with the constructions that come with building around Joel Embiid that it needs to be more than just one guy as the answer. Well, luckily, I think the Sixers stumbled upon that very much impactful player in Adem Bona in the second round. We saw him make his debut in the Summer League tonight, in tonight's Summer League overall, though we did see the Sixers produce a 102-92 victory. In those 24 minutes of action that Bona did play, produced 7 points, 7 rebounds, also had 2 assists, a steal, and 2 blocks, shot 3 of 6 from the floor, 1 of 1 from the free throw line, and his activity felt like much more than that. The guy was everywhere all over the floor, even so much for skying for an alley-oop like this and putting the man on an absolute poster. And by the way, that came in from a nice lob from Jared McCain there. And to touch on the rest of the Summer League production here, we saw Ricky Council IV be the story of the night in his 28 minutes, producing 29 points, 8 rebounds, shot 5 of 10 from 3. He scored the Sixers' first 17 points in the fourth quarter all by himself, went on a run. I believe he ended with 19 points in the fourth quarter alone and was the driving force. He had the look of a player that is too good for Summer League, which is a great sign to see that, and a dude who's just heading into his second year in the league. A couple other names to bring up. Jared McCain produced 15 points, also added 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, looked composed, looked confident, looked like exactly what you want in a guy that could be this archetype of point guard. The shots did not fall. He did struggle from beyond the arc, going 0 for 6 on his three-point attempts, but did a really nice job getting to the rim, showed his composure. You're seeing a little bit of like Malcolm Brogdon, Andre Miller in his game a little bit. He's excellent at getting a player on his back hip and finding a way to finish around the rim despite that defender. So I was impressed by Jared McCain tonight, even though I think there are better days ahead for him. We also got 15 points from Jeff Doughton, also added 4 assists, shot 1 for 3 from 3 there. 12 points off the bench from Keeve Aluma, who's a player to watch for a potential two-way deal. But ultimately, I do want to talk in this video about the backup center position. So I mentioned Andre Drummond as the initial replacement, but the reason that I wanted to bring this up in such full focus is there was a quote from Joel Embiid about the Paul George addition that really inspired me and is really huge for what I think is a look into what Joel Embiid's outlook could be. So he sat down with Tim Bontemps of ESPN, who, by the way, was the man who mentioned to Joel Embiid that Paul George would be on the pregame broadcast, which led, Joel Embiid to sitting on the broadcast and hitting one of the more legendary side eyes of all time, which may very well pave the way for Paul George to truly consider the Sixers. But regardless of that, I did want to pull up this quote when asking about the fit with Paul Reed, and Bontemps writes, "What has Embiid especially excited about this team, however, is that he believes the addition of George and the emergence of Maxey can take some pressure off him needing to dominate in the same way on a nightly basis. Embiid is coming off a season where he averaged 34.7 points in 39 games, missing a large chunk of the season with a knee injury, and was on pace to become the second player, along with Wilt Chamberlain, to average more points than minutes played over the course of a season. Quote, it makes me excited because I think that actually might be the key. I think that actually might keep me healthy," Embiid said. "I don't have to exert myself and make sure I have 30, 40 every single night for us to win, and I can let them do their thing. There will be nights where they got it going, and that's okay. But if I have 10 or 15 points, yeah, that's fine. But there's going to be some nights like that, and then there's going to also be some nights where I got it going. So it all evens out at the end of the day. But I think the goal is just to allow those guys to be themselves so I don't have to in the playoffs. That's another story. Now we can get it going. But in the regular season, just allow them to feel good about themselves and just play well." So I love this mentality for him being willing to take a bit of a step back. That is one of the larger questions that I'm very excited to dive deeper into, and we'll have a better idea as we get some actual on-court product and see some quotes from these guys. But what is the mentality for each of these guys? We know when there are these big threes that everybody has to sacrifice a little bit for things to work. And sometimes the egos get in the way of that. I don't sense it's going to be the way with this trio, with Tyrese Maxey, with Paul George, with Joel Embiid, that each of these guys are, I guess, a little more self-aware than some of the other big trios that we've seen. Think about the Kevin Durant, the Kyrie Irving, the James Harden trio, even down in Miami, which obviously did work out. It took Chris Bosh having to take a fullback seat and essentially be a spot-up shooter. Now, I don't think any of these guys, with Paul George and Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, will need to sacrifice to that extent, as I do believe their games are very cohesive and will fit together. But it is nice to see this expressed from Joel. But in those times in which Joel will be sitting out, they will have to find ways to replace and find production elsewhere. Now, I mentioned Andre Drummond, which everyone is excited to have back. I did want to dive into just how productive Drummond has been, and I pulled up some per 36 stats here, so not exactly can use as gospel, as there is a little bit of, variance in it when you do even things out. But to take a look at what Drummond is producing here, we're talking about last year with the Chicago Bulls in his per 36 minute stats, averaging 17.7 points, 18.9 rebounds. This coming after 18.8 rebounds per 36 the year below. He ranked in the 100th percentile in both offensive and defensive rebounding percentage in these past 2 seasons, which is just off the charts impressive there. And that will help with addressing the Sixers' need from a rebounding standpoint. But I do think Adem Bona is going to be the guy waiting in the wing. That with Drummond in those games in which Joel Embiid will sit out, obviously Drummond moves to that starter role, and Bona becomes the guy. Well, I think he is proving that he could be ready. And to dive into what he produced at the college level in his 2 seasons at UCLA, in which he was Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, we also saw him average 12.4 points, 5.9 rebounds, 1.2 assists, 1.1 steals, 1.8 blocks, and doing all that in just 26.5 minutes per game. Now, there are some B-ball Paul-like characteristics to his game. He will have to rein in the foul issues a little bit. He is all energy all the time, but there's a little more composure and normalcy in Adem Bona's game. That for Paul Reed specifically, there was always this instinct inside him that he wanted to do a little bit more than he probably should. For backup centers specifically, and really a lot of reserve players at the NBA level, sometimes the best advice to give is just play within yourself. Do the things you know that you are good at. And I do think Adem Bona has already accepted that type of responsibility. He also has already spoken very highly of Joel Embiid. Bona himself is originally from Africa, the country of Nigeria, I believe there, and talked about how much of a figurehead Joel Embiid is to people over there, following in his footsteps, the hero that he is. And obviously we have Joel Embiid now representing the United States on the national stage, which I think is very cool, and I think he embodies the American dream in a way that very few can fully just embrace and represent and themselves, even though he has caught some heat for obviously playing with Team USA. I do think it is cool, so I'm excited about that. But for Bona specifically, this is a guy that can absolutely learn from Joel Embiid, not just in the lifestyle and how to handle NBA life and the adjustments to living in the United States, which Bona has been here for a decent amount of time as well. Embiid was a little bit more of a newcomer, moved here when he was 16 and has been here ever since. But he also can learn on the basketball court that there is a little more to Bona's game than I honestly expect. There were some dribble handoffs that they ran. He obviously can be a rim running, lob catching, shot blocking center, which will be the bread and butter to his game. But I do think that he can develop into more of that. So I'm feeling a lot better about the backup center position since seeing Bona step on the court and wear a Sixers uniform. And I know I'm not going to make my full take based on one summer league game. There's plenty still to play out and see what happens from there. But I do think the Sixers do have their blueprint to, in theory, we're cutting back on Joel Embiid's minutes. Andre Drummond is going to be that innings eater that can produce in the regular season and be that starting caliber center on those nights. And then they do have this young prospect that they are grooming that could potentially be an impact long-term backup center for the Sixers there. So I do love the blueprint that is being laid. And obviously, still plenty of moves to occur, as there's still a lot of roster space to occupy. As of now, I believe is 8 players officially under contract, although I don't think the Jared McCain contract is official yet, so those numbers will change a little bit. But the bottom line is there's going to be some veterans minimums coming to this Sixers team that I'm intrigued about. But for Bona specifically, that is a guy to keep an eye on from here. And I also will note that I personally will be heading out there to Las Vegas starting Friday, taking the Summer League action from out there, chilling with my guy RB Philly Takes. So make sure to stay tuned for some awesome content coming from out there. We're going to see what we can stumble into as far as interviews. Got the press approval for some Sixers games and stuff out there. So very excited about the content coming out. Hopefully get a chance to speak to Bona in person and a bunch of the other players out there. But I do think for this video specifically, I did want to reference that it does feel for the first time there's a little bit more cohesive strategy to how to keep Joel Embiid healthy. And having these bodies, having these players that are ready to step up and fill a role that is necessary on the Sixers team does change everything for the Sixers and for Joel Embiid specifically. We know the situation, and this goes to say this applies to a lot of teams, and specifically with the Clippers as well, when you think about the Paul George and Kawhi era that they did have there. But for the Sixers, if they get there healthy, they got a puncher's chance. That if the Sixers can get through the season where you have a healthy Joel Embiid heading into the playoffs, that's a scary team to line up against. So I do feel like they have a plan in place in a better sense than was the case. That I do think throughout Joel Embiid's career, there has been too much give and take. And to his credit, he honestly suits up way more than the perception of him is. And honestly, to a point where there's games where he should not and he absolutely still does. So I would like that reined in this year, and that does seem to be a universal belief within the Sixers team. So shout out to Andre Drummond to coming to Philadelphia. Shout out to Adem Bona for being that next star I guess, backup big center waiting in the wing. I keep wanting to say star because of how important that position has been to the Sixers team throughout the Joel Embiid era, but ultimately we will see what he grows into. Maybe I'm selling him a little short for just a backup center there. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you in on the Adem Bona experience? Are you excited for what he's going to bring to this team? And are you confident about this being the plan that could keep Joel Embiid healthy? Let me know all of your comments below. Make sure you are dropping a like on this video if you have not already, subscribing to the channel if you haven't yet, and dropping any comments you have below as well. And I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.